I'm going to be doing some work on my clusters today. So a cluster is essentially just a stack of different embellishments and decorations stuck together. I find that they're a great way to use up scrap pieces of paper. So I've got a few of the book pages here, some torn up just scrap paper that I've used for the stamping here, some of my stamped images, some of my fussy cut images, and I'm also going to be doing a bit of stamping for these ones. So you want to start by having a relatively solid base, so something that you can attach everything to. So I'm going to have that as one of my bases, and I might go for a bit of a bigger one out of this. So I like the look of the torn edges. I don't necessarily like them to be straight cut. And I also like to have the torn edges to be on the top. I just find it gives a bit of extra texture there. Go for 4 out of that. And I'll keep these scraps. I'll use those later. There's 4 bases there. And I'm just going to tear off a bit of this one to make my 5th base. So these can be as small or as large as you want. So often they're added on top of other pieces as an extra embellishment. So depending on the size of what you're adding them to, you may want to make them quite a bit smaller than what I'm making here. And I probably will make some smaller ones later on as well. So the decoration that I added to the first pocket that I did, this one here, is essentially a cluster as well, but I built that directly on here rather than building it separately and then adding it on. So I might actually make a smaller one out of this as well. Let's make a few extra. So these can be as elaborate or as simple as you want them to be. There aren't really many rules in relation to that. And it's just a case of popping your pieces together, seeing what fits, seeing what you like, and going from there. I'm just going to play around with some shapes to start with. So it can be fun to add some extra texture, to not have everything stacked evenly, so have things poking out over the edge, have a bit of extra texture to it that way. Might actually do some stamping on here. I've just got my number stamp set here from Darkroom Door. I don't know why, but I love adding random numbers that don't really have any meaning. I just think they're a fun little extra. Just going to do a few of these. I may not use them all for this, but then I'll have them for any extra parts that I do want to do. I'll actually stamp that on there as well. And it can be a fun way to add some extra texture as well, to do some stamping and then to stick things partially over it. So for example, with this one, I can then stick an embellishment over part of that stamping there. Alright, I think that's good to get us started. So I'm just going to roughly cut these out. So I don't want them to be square necessarily, so I might cut a little bit closer to the shape of the numbers. So almost like with the fussy cutting that I did with the images earlier. And you can change it up as well, do some odd angles on it. This paper doesn't tear very well, so I don't really want to rip it. But with these, messy is fine. Messy adds texture. I actually cut this one in a vaguely tag shape. So if you don't have tag cutters, a way that you can cut a tag shape is just to cut off the corners, and then you can pop a hole in there, and then you've essentially got a little mini tag there. Oh, I didn't cut those very evenly. I'm just going to round the corners because that's what I do. Alright, and I'm going to do some inking along the edges of those as well. Alright, there we go. So I'm just starting to sort of build these out as I go, seeing what I want to put where. Just seeing what works well together. I might just take the very edge off here because I think that's a bit thin. That's not really going to hold up very well. Like tissue paper on the edge there. Need to. I think I need something extra on that. I'll figure that out in a few minutes. I'm just going through my fussy cut images from the books. So there's all different sizes in here, so I'm just picking out the ones that I think will work well with the sizes that I've got. Oh, I like that one now. Maybe the other way. Maybe a little bit offset. So I'm just picking what I think is going to work best with each cluster. So once again, there aren't rules for this, so just whatever you like is good. I'm going to need something with a bit more colour for that one. These are quite delicate, so I need to be a bit careful. They've got some very fine edges to them. Thankfully, this is quite thick paper, so it does hold up relatively well, but I do still need to be a little bit careful. Something for this one. Alright, so I still think this one needs a little bit extra. Might actually just do some stenciling over that one. So I'll put that aside. I'll do that in a minute. I'll glue these ones together first. So play around with the layers, so how you want to stack everything together. I recommend deciding that before you start gluing anything down. So it just makes it a bit easier when you know what's going where. So with most of these, I'm just using the text as a sort of decoration. It doesn't actually mean a whole lot, but I do like that that one just has bittersweet there along with the leaf. I think it's just a little bit cute, just adds a little something extra. I think with this one I want to glue the flower underneath the rest of the embellishments. So this is where I recommend just playing around with the layout, seeing what you think looks good, and before you actually commit to gluing anything down. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just adding a bit of extra glue under these parts at the top to make sure they stay stuck down all the way to the edge. So later on I will be sticking this whole thing to a page, so I can add a bit of extra glue then as well, but it just makes it a bit easier if it's on there from the start. Now for this one, to add a bit of stenciling, just to give it a little bit extra there. think I'll go for this one again. And I'm going to do the stenciling in green, just because I've got the brown stamped there already. And I'm going to go a bit heavier than I've gone with the other ones so far. And I'm just going to also use this one. So it can be really fun to layer up your stencils. So you can use softer ink or a bit less ink with some of them, and then a bit more ink with others, and it gives a nice contrast there while being the same color and essentially the same shape as well. Just a little bit more down here as well, I think. Right, so that just adds something a little bit extra to something that was quite plain before. I just add that in there as well, just because I've got it there. I'm going to actually ink the edge of this one in green as well, I think. So because this has a roughly torn edge, the ink will just help pick up a few of the fibres along the edge there. Alright, and there's the completed clusters. I ended up doing a few more than 5, but that's fine because they're great just to add to different embellishments that you're making in your journal. They just help to add a little bit of extra when something looks a little bit plain. And they're also just a great thing to keep on hand in a general stash. So if you do feel like making a journal, you've got some pieces there that you can use either for inspiration or as a base.